All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item of business is public comments. Mr. Kasimis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Public comments. When I call your name, please come up to the podium. If you don't mind, give us your name and address for the recording. You'll have 3 minutes. Please keep your comments civil. When you have 30 seconds left, I will wave my hand. At that point, we ask that you begin to close, and at 3 minutes, we ask that you close. We have Ms. Sue Haney.
Good evening. Sue Haney, 7 Christopher Lane. The Norwalk Hour reported that Bruce Mellion, head of the Norwalk Federation of Teachers, thinks the superintendent candidates should be vetted publicly and that parents should have a say in the process. With all due respect, his advocacy for parents should be met with a solid dose of skepticism. Mr. Mellion isn't a Norwalk parent or taxpayer. He doesn't even teach in Norwalk. He is an employee of a multi-million-dollar private corporation funded by a dues-paying membership. All of his member communications are done via private emails so as not to be subject to FOIA. For the Norwalk Federation of Teachers, the less transparency, the better. With calls for inclusion, Mr. Mellion and others are hoping that those leaders and Board of Ed members who received union endorsements will press the case for transparency. Why? Because transparency gives the unions spin control over the superintendent candidates. Mr. Mellion is doing his job, however. As Albert Shanker, the founder of the American Federation of Teachers, stated, quote, "When school children start paying union dues, that's when I'll start representing the interests of school children," end of quote. In any case, Mr. Mellion does his own private vetting during superintendent searches. Right after our vote to hire Dr. Marks, he stood up and told the Board of Ed that according to his union contacts in Maryland, Marks was a great choice. 60 days later, when Dr. Marks recommended that the Board of Ed fire a menacing tenured teacher, not done in Norwalk for 40 years, all but one Board of Ed member agreed with her. $250,000, and 2 years later, the board prevailed, but not before Marks became public enemy number 1 to Mr. Mellion's NFT and the others in this district who fight change. Marks left, and an insider was hired as interim. We heard no calls for public vetting and no calls for transparency from Mr. Mellion, any other unions, or from the status quo. Mellion didn't even attend Board of Ed meetings that year. He didn't need to. During the search for Dr. Rivera, Mr. Mellion again did his own reconnaissance. Getting back to transparency, a superintendent search that doesn't provide confidentiality will seriously reduce Norwalk's chances of attracting a vibrant and quality pool of candidates. It will seriously reduce Norwalk's chances of getting another top-notch superintendent. We all know that, including the NFT. A search process that is redundant and subjected to random and deliberate delays, as witnessed under our last interim period, wastes students' time. We all know that too. But let's give credit where credit is due. Those who have fought change have done a fabulous job. Norwalk Public Schools' reputation as a district able to keep top talent is in tatters. We are damaged goods. Hire a search firm who comes in with eyes wide open. Keep the search confidential. Don't waste time. And for the sake of our students in this city, do not make this any harder than it already is. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, that's all that is signed up.
Okay. We will not have a superintendent's report tonight. Dr. Rivera, for the first time in his career here, is taking a sick day. He has bad flu and bronchitis and cannot talk, which makes him of little usefulness at a board meeting, and plus we don't want to all get what he has. So we will proceed to the actions. Item 1 is consent calendar. Tonight's consent calendar is section 5.2A, approval of personnel, 5.2B, approval of budget transfers, 5.2C, approval of trip, Norwalk High School to Spain, February 2016. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar? Ms. Keyes moves, Mr. Barbas seconds. Any discussion on the consent calendar? Hearing none, we'll proceed to a vote. All in favor of approving the calendar, please indicate. And that's unanimous. Thank you. All right, we are going to, by agreement of the board, we're going to flip items 3 and 4. So we're going to take up item 4 first, appointment of interim superintendent of schools. The chair would entertain a motion to approve Mr. James A. Connolly to be the interim superintendent of schools for the Norwalk Public Schools. Is there such a motion? Mr. Kasimis moves. Is there a second? Mr. Chiramonte? I will explain part of this choice. Dr. Connolly, who is a graduate with several degrees from the Teachers College at Columbia University, served for approximately 20 years as the superintendent of schools and assistant superintendent of schools in the Bridgeport public school system. He retired not long before some major controversies that succeeded him in Bridgeport, but he was not associated with those controversies. And Mr. Connolly, in addition to extensive experience as a deputy superintendent of schools and superintendent of schools in Bridgeport, also has been everything from director of pupil personnel services to development coordinator to a special education teacher. In addition, Mr. Connolly has extensive experience serving as interim superintendents of schools at districts around the state. He has served at the Region 16, Killingly, Putnam, Killingly again, Woodbridge, Region 16 again, Putnam, Montvale, Oxford, and Naugatuck Public Schools as interim superintendent of schools. One thing we wanted to do is to publicly thank Dr. Rivera and Tom Mooney, our attorney, for very quickly providing us with two absolutely top-notch candidates. Now, in order to maintain the confidentiality of the other candidate, I'm not going to say his name, but I will say that every member of the board found the other candidate also fully acceptable as a candidate for interim superintendent of schools. Both of the candidates who were brought to us were absolutely outstanding. I would say that they were interestingly different candidates. One was someone that I would characterize as a visionary with a tremendous record of experience at innovative management of his school system. Another, who happens to be the person that we've chosen, Mr. Connolly, was more of a hands-on, get things done type person. And my own personal view, and other board members can certainly express theirs, is that it was a very, very close call. For me, it was 52-48. It was that close. And again, I'm very grateful that we had, in a very short period of time, the opportunity to interview such a pair of outstanding candidates. Again, I would say that the other candidate, again, a visionary, this candidate, a practical guy. I think part of the reason for the very slight preference of the board for Mr. Connolly is because of the fact that he's had extensive experience as an interim. He has gotten comfortable with the idea of going into school districts that are in a transitional period, picking up the ball and continuing to run with it. And I think that experience of his in doing that on multiple occasions, at least in my own case, was part of the reason for the slight preference that I ended up with for this candidate. So the individual will, assuming approval by the board, would probably start on January 19th, which would allow for a 2-week overlap with Dr. Rivera before he departs, and allow the new superintendent, the interim superintendent, to get fully up to speed on the projects going on. Mr. Connolly certainly did indicate that he understands the need to take the strategic plan that Dr. Rivera put together and that this board endorsed and keep it moving so we don't lose momentum. during that interim period and while we are carrying on a search for a permanent superintendent. So again, I'm delighted that we had two really good candidates by, I think, almost a photo finish. Mr. Connolly came out slightly ahead in relation to another really excellent candidate. So I'm very happy to support Mr. Connolly's appointment. Any other comments or questions from board members? Hearing none, we'll proceed to a vote. All in favor of approving the appointment of James Connolly as interim superintendent, please indicate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Opposed? No opposed. Abstentions? 2 abstentions. All right. Mr. Connolly has been approved by the board. Just to let people know the technical aspects of this, I have to send a letter to the Commissioner of Education tomorrow indicating that we have selected Mr. Connolly, and we have to get approval from the Commissioner of Education before we can sign a contract with him. So my objective would be to try to get that approval in and then get a contract ready, hopefully for our January 6th meeting, so we can approve the contract at that point, and then he would be in a position to start on the 19th. Okay? Thank you very much. All right, let's see. Next item on the agenda is, this is flipping back to number 3, is approval of superintendent of schools search consultant. The board, as you know, issued a RFP at our last meeting requesting proposals from various firms, and 4 of those proposals came in and have been shared with the members of the board. And the 4 proposals came in from ProAct Search, which is the firm that we used for the search that brought Dr. Rivera, from Ray and Associates, from New England School Development Council, or NESDEC, and from CABE, which is the Connecticut Association of Boards of Education. All right, and Chair would entertain a motion if anyone has a motion for approval of any entity or any other action. Mr. Barbas.
Yes, I'd like to, can I make a motion for who
Yeah.
I would recommend?
Yeah.
I make a motion that we vote for ProAct to be our firm. We have used them in the past, and they know us very well. They know what our challenges are. They found us Manny Rivera, and I think it would be the most logical choice. If you look at the numbers, their bid is slightly higher, but I think they appreciate what they're going to have to do to find us a new permanent superintendent.
Okay. Is there a second?
A second.
Mr. Chairman, seconds. Any discussion? Ms. Mosby?
Yeah, I thought that, I'm not sure where it falls into where we can table this, because we had that discussion, because I mentioned that at least 2 of the board members were not here when this initially started, and we didn't have a chance to have a discussion or feedback on any of these 4 search firms. And I wanted to table it so we can all get together as a group and try to come to a consensus and ask questions and find out what's going on. At this point now, with this vote going on, at least 2 people who weren't part of it is going to be excluded. And I'm asking if we can just table it, because right now we just appointed an interim superintendent of schools, so we have someone now that is coming in, and we need to sit here and make sure that all of us are involved, all 9 of us, in order for us to move on. And right now, I myself, and I can't speak for the other person, but 2 of us were not here when this initially started, and of course, everyone else have information that we don't really have or experience that we weren't privy to because we weren't here. So I'm asking if we could table this until we all can sit here as a group and discuss these different, search consultant firms.
Okay. Mr. Chairman?
I think Ms. Mosby makes a good point. However, we're going into the holiday season, And if we were to pick this up and have a discussion in January, and by the time we do wind up picking someone up, we're going to lose a critical time when one of the most best pool of candidates that are out there for us to pick from. If we were to do that, you're probably looking sometime in March, start looking around, and that's going to put us back and not give us the best quality of superintendents to pick from. So that's the only, while she has a good point, we're going to lose a critical part of where we could find a good superintendent, I think.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Murray?
I would ask that we look at possibly doing a special meeting, because I am sensitive to the time frame and the turnaround time that we have. But as I said, but we have board members who've been through the process. We actually had the experience of interviewing these search firms. So, and it's very important that we stay on the same page, because we know that we need to be able to come forward with the superintendent and stay on the same page and be part of the process. The whole process should continue with the whole board. If we start off not doing that, then now we're already starting to separate the board in the process. So that's why I would think that because of the time frame, which is very true, Mr. Tremonti, but the fact of it is either we can have a special meeting just for that item, and then move forward so that we will be on the timetable, so that we'll be able to get out ahead of this curve when we get into January, looking at selecting the consultant search.
Ms. Keys?
I agree with Ms. Mosby and actually Ms. Murray as well. I mean, and I also agree with Mr. Chiaramonte. I think time is of essence here. I mean, this is my third superintendent search. I think ProAct was uniquely involved with Norwalk. They knew our needs. They worked very closely with us. They were a top-notch firm, and they were able to give us Dr. Rivera. So I highly recommend ProAct. I think they would be the firm to go with. However, I understand the concerns with Ms. Mosby and other members as well. So maybe we could work out something where we could have a special meeting soon. I would suggest that even though the holidays are coming, again, time is of essence, that we get the right candidate in. So hopefully we can work out something.
Mr. Chiaramonte? I'm sorry, first Ms. Harris.
Can you briefly explain what the process is? I mean, when I was thinking of time being of the essence, my two choices were either CADE or ProAct, just in doing my own research. But if we could know the process or just sort of.
Well, the process is spelled out in policy 3323, which does not require interviews or anything like that. I mean, you can do it on the basis of a paper proposal. It says each order shall be placed on the basis of quality, price, and delivery. Past service of a favorable nature shall be a factor when considerations are equal. Competitive bidding shall be practiced when feasible. All purchases of and contracts for supplies, materials, equipment, and contractual services, involving more than $3,000 shall be based on 2 or more competitive quotations. And all purchases over $7,500 require competitive bids based on written specifications and advertised. Now Mr. Rudel got the RFP that we approved 2 weeks ago out to a whole bunch of firms. 4 of them responded to the bid, so we've met the requirements of the process. So we could vote tonight and we would be in compliance with the process. Now, that's not to say that we can't do additional work. I mean, if people are willing to come back in the middle of the holidays for a special board meeting.
I personally am unable to come during the middle of the holidays.
Either week? Okay.
I mean, same.
Oh. Okay.
But I can.
Okay. Mr.
No,
Jack had his hand up.
I'm sorry, Jack, then Artie.
I was going to suggest coming back as soon as possible, maybe if we could have whittled down the 3 down to 2, and maybe have those 2 come in for an evening, and we could meet with them ASAP.
Do Skype maybe, like we did before? Some kind of Skype interview?
Well, we don't necessarily
Oh, not
have
the
to do
interview, but-
an interview.
Okay,
I
right.
mean, the request is to have a discussion among the board members. So
Okay.
we could have a special meeting and just have everybody look at the proposals that have come in and we can talk about them.
Can we do that by phone? Maybe if the members are away, we can set up a call-in?
No, unfortunately, remember I proposed that and the board didn't go along with it?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you,
Electronic board
Ms.
meeting.
Lyons.
I proposed that we adopt a policy to allow for electronic meetings of the board, and the policy committee rejected it. So we can't do that. Let's see. Okay, so people are pretty much shot for the holidays, which puts us into early January, and probably not until late January would be in a position to vote, which means a long delay.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, did you say that we have a special meeting the first part, could it be the first week in January?
He asked for the 30th.
The regular meeting is the 6th. So I think realistically, if we can't meet during the holidays, you remember the January 1 is the Thursday of the first week. So you're not going to meet that week. So then it's 5, 6, 6th is the next regular.
And then is it possible to have a special meeting to vote, once we have that meeting? To review the search?
How about next Tuesday?
Well, what I was going to suggest is, we got people that are going to be gone.
Next Tuesday?
Yeah,
How about this
This
Friday?
We were thinking this Friday.
Thursday, Friday?
Thursday I can't do. I could do
I
Friday
can't
if
do
people.
Thursday.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
can't
but they're
do
going to be.
Thursday.
She's going to be
Oh, I
gone.
thought she's away the 30th.
She said both.
I can do Friday.
This
Can anybody
Friday.
do
This Friday.
I can do Friday.
I probably can't do
Friday, but not Thursday. I can do Friday, but not Thursday.
I can't do Thursday, I can do Friday.
I can do
See,
Yeah, you can.
I probably
Yeah,
won't
I
be
mean, you're
able
going
to.
to be.
Yeah.
Are you available Friday?
No.
I can do Thursday.
Heidi can't do. No possibility of the 29th and 30th?
No.
Well,
Thursday? This Thursday?
Can't do Thursday.
You can't do Thursday?
Can't do Thursday, and Sherelle can't do Thursday.
Okay.
well, my concern would be delaying it all the way to January 20th, but I suppose we
No,
could
no, no,
do,
that's too far. That's too far.
we could do what we did today. We could have a special session meeting on the 6th,
Prior to our meeting?
prior to the regular meeting.
To the next board
Just for
meeting.
this, just for
Yeah,
this
before
topic.
today.
I'm away on the 6th. but You don't have to change it for me.
Okay. All right, why don't we do that? Why don't we,
January 6th, before, like, what time are we looking
yeah,
at?
I'll schedule a special,
I'm away that week.
You're not at the next board meeting?
Not the 6th. I'm away that whole week for a conference.
oh,
I think
that's
the
right, you
majority
told
of
me
us
that.
can be there.
I told you.
We might not be able to get everyone, as long as most, can everybody make it the 6th? Okay, then I think, Artie's the only one,
I'm
right?
the only one, yeah.
I think that's the closest
All
we're
right,
gonna
then,
get it.
then why don't we do that? We'll meet on the 6th.
Prior to?
Yeah, make it, what do you think, 6 o'clock? Do we need
Is
to
it
be
an
earlier?
executive session or
Wait a
public
minute,
meeting?
Mike,
I
I'm
have
sorry.
a question, so
Okay.
what's the difference in meeting this Friday
that's true.
and the 6th, because it's 1-on-1? One person can't meet this Friday, one person can't meet on the 6th.
We could do it this
So,
Friday. I'm the only one that
time is
can't
of the
Friday.
essence.
It's according to the individual. They want to forfeit.
It's me, and I won't be able, definitely cannot make it Friday. I'm fine with that, with everybody else.
It's the answer.
The sooner the better, so I think you should all do it Friday.
That's the answer.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
Okay?
I'll,
Sherelle? No, but we have to get it done.
we'll make it earlier than normal.
Yes,
What,
please.
Like 6 o'clock, okay?
Yeah,
I can do 6.
6 o'clock is fine.
So, all right, so I will send out a notice that we're gonna have a meeting at 6 o'clock this Friday.
Is it a public meet or executive session?
It's, I'm not sure if we're even, I'll have to check with Tom Mooney to see if an
All right.
executive session is appropriate on a contract matter. I'm not sure that it is. Any votes would have to be taken in open session, however.
Would there be a vote taken at this?
Yeah, my anticipation would be, it would be an action item.
Soon.
Okay, well, we need to, I have to pick up my son at the airport, so this is gonna be on the early side.
When would you have to be out of there?
7 something, 7:30.
All right, why don't I make it 5:30? that all right? People make 5:30? 5:30 Friday.
Can I?
Sherelle has something.
You're seeing business in action here, folks. Sherelle?
So what, are we gonna talk to are the people, will the people be there? Are we just gonna ask questions? What?
This was going to be a discussion among us based on the written proposals.
Just not based on the written proposals, yeah.
All right, so I will send out a,
Is that satisfactory to everybody, is all I'm saying.
It's okay.
Okay.
that's what
Because
everybody understands?
Some of us interviewed them last time.
Yeah. Yes, 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 okay. So that's what we're going to do this Friday. I will send out a notice,
But it's not an interview.
and we'll, no, it's a
You okay
discussion.
with that?
It's discussion among ourselves.
It's a discussion.
Discussion among
And I
ourselves
can-
based on the
That
proposals.
gives us an opportunity to find out what everyone, you know,
Yes,
from,
right.
get, you know, because we didn't
Correct.
have that chance.
Correct.
Yeah,
Right.
okay? Everybody's copacetic? All right, that's what we'll do. So, Ms. Mosby, why don't you make a motion to table this item to the 5:30 meeting on Friday?
I make a motion to table item number, well, we moved it to four, of the approval of the superintendent of schools search consultant to this Friday at 5:30.
Okay, is there a second? Mr. Kasimis so moves. All right, motion to table is not debatable. All in favor, please indicate. That's unanimous. Okay. All right. Next item on the agenda is approval of contract for Chief of Technology Innovations and Partnerships, Ralph Valenzizi. Excuse me while I get my paperwork. Okay, let's see. All right. Transfers, yeah, I'm just filling in. I gotta find the paperwork. Here we go. Okay. Super. All right, Chair would entertain a motion to approve the contract for Chief of Technology Innovations and Partnerships, Ralph Valenzizi, that's in the packet. Mr. Barbas moves, Ms. Harris seconds. Is there discussion on the motion? Okay, just by way of explanation, Ralph has been steadily working for us, even though his contract had technically expired. And this, Dr. Rivera, in reviewing and approving all of the other contracts for the cabinet, this one slipped through the cracks. So it's basically filling in the contract, which would run from July 1, 2014 retroactively through June 30, 2015, which is the same timeframe as all of the other cabinet positions. All right, any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to a vote. All in favor of approving the contract, please indicate. And that's unanimous, thank you. All right, and now we are going to have the presentation of the proposed 2015 to 2016 NPS budget. In the absence of Dr. Rivera, our ever-busy finance director, Mr. Rudel will walk us through the budget.
So when we started the budget presentation and the budget development, Dr. Rivera wanted to have certain principles that started the development process. He wanted to build on the foundation of the existing budget, the 14-15 budget. He wanted to improve the learning environment for all students and staff. He wanted to focus on the implementation and delivering on his key objectives, and he wanted to pursue quality and excellence. Part of the foundation been staying the course, which was creating a culture of accountability and high expectations, building the knowledge and skills and capacity of teachers and school leaders, ensuring that all students are on track to meet and exceed learning expectations by the end of grade 3, providing the necessary systems, structures, and tools to be successful, and to create a new pre-K through college and career grade 14-16 mindset. This was the strategic plan that was approved by the board. It includes our mission, vision, goals, and focus areas. It talks about the culture of accountability, building knowledge and capacity, a new learning environment, system structure and support, and partnerships for a new pre-K to 16 mindset. This was really the foundation that started the budget process for 15-16. While we were doing the budget, we wanted to make sure that we had input from everybody. Principals and department heads submitted their budget recommendations. We held parent forum groups at all 4 middle schools as well as Grace Baptist Church. We had working group recommendations, and the superintendent had a superintendent advisory committee, which included principals, central office administrators, and cabinet. He wanted to focus on accountability and standards. That was a big part of 13-14 and 14-15. Going into the 15-16 budget, it includes the standard initiative, goals and common assessments, school governance, district data dashboards, and aligning standards with performance appraisals. We talked about in previous budgets, common core state standards, personalized learning, English language learners, special education and diversity. We focused on curriculum and instruction site directors, state standards, professional development, whether it be student engagement or literacy or math or special education, technology, summer school, diversity recruitment and early hiring. In 13-14, we talked about the library design, the Briggs High School turnaround, the NEASC accreditation, expanding the use of technology, designing new programs, and the need for more diversity. In 15-16, we're focusing on student culture, student engagement, the NEASC accreditation, the Norwalk Early College Academy, the ID program, that's performing a proposal for Norwalk High School to become a performing arts magnet, the Norwalk International Academy, the Norwalk Early Childhood Center, the Briggs turnaround, additional technology. In 13-14 and 14-15, we talked about human resources and the need to develop that, financial and resource management, curriculum and instruction, data systems, school safety, the facility utilization plan. In 15-16, human resources will be doing more diversity recruitment and hiring, new policies and procedures. Within the finance section, position control, enhanced oversight over special education and grants, ensuring that we're compliant with our annual audit. In curriculum and instruction, K-5 writing, social studies, science, world languages. In facilities, we have a facility utilization study that we're soon to recommend a vendor to the board. District building management system is in the new budget. Building specific improvements in the budget and paving in the budget. Partnerships. We focused on partnerships in 13-14 and 14-15 with Norwalk Acts. Access to quality pre-K, pursuing new strategies to engage parents, expanding access to after-school and summer learning, expanding access to mentors, help. For 15-16, pre-K is a big focus. Parent engagement, expanding summer school, increasing the number of mentors. As you can see, our enrollment has grown. From 13-14 to the projections for 15-16, it's almost 200 additional students. We've seen a significant influx in English language learner students. That's a big portion of the 15-16 budget. Our free and reduced lunch has also grown as a district. We went from 39% in 2009-10 to 51% in 14-15. Our ECS funding has remained flat. We get about 7% of our budget is ECS funding. It's about $1,000 a student. And if you look at our DIRG, we're actually, with the exception of Stanford, the lowest in our DIRG in terms of ECS funding. For our revenue assumptions, the budget assumes a 2.74% increase from the city of Norwalk, which is lower than the past two recommended budgets. It assumes ECS funding will not change in the current year. Surplus Medicaid revenue is included, carrying over of all unencumbered alliance funds, and then grant funding is projected to slightly decrease to approximately $22 million. And that decrease is largely due to one-time capital grants that we received for things like NECA. Expense assumptions. We had a lot of new contracts that were negotiated. All the salaries are in accordance with the collective bargaining agreements, and they are less than projected a year ago in the multi-year model. All bargaining units as of January 1 will be transitioned into a high deductible health plan. The per pupil allocation to schools remains consistent in past years of $85 for high school, $74 for middle school, $71 for elementary. A big portion of this budget is the creation of a Norwalk special education program. We are projecting a reduction in OTPT consulting services of about $1.2 million. Projected expenses for transportation is limited to a 2.5% annual increase for type 1 buses. We are currently in the last year of our transportation contract, and that is set to go out to bid in a few months. This is really a cost composite of the key expense drivers for the Norwalk Public Schools budget. About 85% of the budget is salary and benefits, with about 4% going to special education, 4% to transportation, 2% for facilities maintenance, and 2% for utilities like electricity, fuel oil, and natural gas. This budget maintains low class size for K-5. It has an investment in class size reserve teachers. It increases funding for high school athletics and takes the step towards greater equity between the marching bands and athletics. It increases funding for ELL enrollment at all school levels. And we have Colleen Becker here, who will speak a little bit towards the investment that we plan on making into ELL.
Thank you, and good evening. After years of slow and steady growth in our English language learner population, this school year, really since January of last school year, we have seen a surge in our population, and I'd like to share some of the data with you briefly. Previously, our English language learners were about 12% of our school population, and now they're 14%. And in numbers, this means that last year we had 1,300 ELLs, and as of today, we have 1,580 ELLs, and we just got 3 new students in the last 2 weeks who aren't in that number. They keep coming. So this represents about a 22% increase in 1 year. Some of this increase is due to the fact that the state has raised the bar for exiting our ELL students from the program, but even taking that into consideration, we still have a 15% real increase in our population. This is partly due to, but not completely due to the new students that have come who have crossed the border as minors and are now living with relatives in Norwalk. We have 85 of those students as of today. So at the high school, our ESL Level 1 courses are full and closed. We have no more room. So we've taken some steps, some immediate steps, and I formed a committee, and we hope to form a Norwalk International Academy next semester, and you'll be hearing about a budget transfer later tonight so that we can do that. And this will alleviate the overcrowding of our ESL classes at the high school, and also will better meet the needs of these new students who, some of whom have missed several years in their education, so they have gaps and they need this special program. So the teachers that we're asking for now will also be needed next year as our students move up the levels of ESL and as we get new Level 1 students, which we always do. At the middle schools, we've seen this surge also, and especially at Nathan Hale Middle School, because historically we haven't had many beginners at Nathan Hale, and the services were not the same as the other 3 middle schools. But now with 17 beginners at Nathan Hale, which they've never had before, we need to have the same services at Nathan Hale as we have at the other middle schools, so there's something in the budget for that. Excuse me. And at the elementary schools, I feel that we've really reached a tipping point where the ESL and bilingual teachers are stretched so thin that I'm starting to question the effectiveness of the services. And in some schools, we've had to triage our services and have the teachers only serve the beginners and low intermediates because we just don't have enough staff. So that's a broad view of the needs of the ELL Education Department. And are there any questions about that? Anything I've said or? Okay, thank you.
Well, we do have a question.
So, I mean, I'm sure it varies, and I know I've heard one child arrived at Brian McMahon hasn't been in school for 7 years, so I mean, obviously they're extraordinary cases, but
Right.
Your typical ELL student that arrives, how long are they in an ELL program before they can mainstream into, regular classes?
Well, they're always mainstream to some degree. And are you thinking about the high school kids?
I know it's
Okay.
a loaded question. I'm
Okay.
wondering in both cases, really.
Yeah, they're always mainstream to some degree, depending if we're talking about elementary, middle, or high school, for example, physical education, art classes, and so forth. It's hard to say typical. Students that have had a solid education and high literacy in their native language tend to exit maybe in 3 years from the program, but students who have not had that benefit, and especially those, and we're getting a lot of these students now who have had gaps and missed, the typical student we're getting now from the 3 countries, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras, where we're getting these unaccompanied minors, the typical student, I would say, is missing 2 to 3 years of education. And so they need to stay in our program quite a bit longer, maybe 5 to 7 years. And that's what the research tells us as well. That's typical for students who have missed years.
But eventually, they can mainstream.
Hopefully. I mean, some of these students who are coming to us are 16, 17 years old. So we're concerned about these students and hoping to keep them in school and having them graduate. But of course, they don't have the luxury of time, so.
So what happens to one of these students? I mean, they come here at 16, they maybe haven't been to school in a number of years, they don't speak English, they need to get caught up academically, they need to learn English, tick-tock, they're supposed to be graduating, they can't graduate, I would think, right?
Well, they can stay with us till they're age 21. So that gives them a few more years. We also offer summer school, intensive summer school, and we're thinking of beefing that up as well. Because right now we offer, excuse me, ESL in our summer school, but some of these students are very low in math. So we're considering adding math to our summer program. So we're doing everything we can to try to help them to catch up.
And can they partake in Apex, or is that all in English and not really?
I believe that's all in English at this point. But once they learn some English, they possibly can, but not at the beginning.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, Rich?
Another area that we want to focus on is increased funding for personnel recruitment, diversity recruitment, and early retirement incentives. We have Lee Palmer here, the chief of HR, who will speak a little bit about that.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. Very briefly, before the meeting, I handed out some 3 sheets of paper to kind of summarize what we're doing with regard to this area. We're trying to be very aggressive with regard to our outreach. And as you know, we've hired a recruitment and placement specialist and have kind of included, based on our diversity plan, the steps that we're taking to address these areas. And what we are doing is very consistent with that plan. The second sheet that I handed out is a list of the historically black colleges and universities that we plan on visiting. Because of obviously budgetary constraints, we have to limit that. And so we've targeted for the spring 4 states, Delaware, DC, Maryland, and Pennsylvania, and yet we are going to contact all of the schools to make sure that we're developing relationships with them in terms of the outreach. In addition to that, the third sheet has a list of the career fairs that we'll be attending, a lot of them in-state, because we want to make sure that we are targeting and reaching out to all groups. And so our focus has been on basically both our underrepresentation with regard to Black, African American, and Hispanic, Latino groups. And that's why, kind of in terms of the budget request, we try to allocate some resources to doing that and to be a lot more aggressive than we have in the past to do that outreach.
Any questions? All right, thank you.
Another key area that we plan on investing is the continued investment in technology. Items like laptops for elementary schools, middle school and high school computer labs, projectors. We have Ralph here. Who will speak a little bit about that?
Good evening, everybody. Real briefly, I just wanted to talk on a couple different bullet points, some things that we've accomplished this year, and then what we plan on doing next year to continue that progress. This year, we've really spent a lot of time on increasing the capacity of the computers that we have in the schools. So all teachers are getting either laptops or Chromebooks. Elementary school teachers are getting Chromebooks. 6 through 12 teachers are getting laptops. Since we do have a mobile environment, we can start to work in that in that capacity. We've increased the amount of Chromebooks in the district this year up to 4,500. So we're in very, very good shape for delivering the Smarter Balanced Assessment, as well as these Chromebooks are being used on a regular basis now throughout the day. We're doing a lot more work with Google Apps for Education. So students are actually developing tools, and teachers are developing tools in a web-based platform that they can access off any device. So in time, our goal is that we're more agnostic in the tools that we use. You can use an iPad, you could use an Android tablet, even a phone in the future, to be able to access the information you want and still get those same technology 21st century learning skills that we're looking to achieve. We're also, as of tomorrow, we'll be starting and initiating a new 3-year educational technology plan. So we have a committee together that will begin the process of talking through what our goals and objectives will be for the next 3 years in regards to educational technology. Next year in the budget, what you're seeing, especially in our capital expenditures, is much more work on some of the maintenance that we need at the moment. We need new labs in our schools right now. They're getting a little old, so some of the labs at the high school level and middle school level all need to be replaced. We did just replace our tech ed labs at the middle school level this year, but we do have some other labs that need a replacement as well. Art and music also being one of the areas that we're going to focus on next year, so some new Macs going into art and music. We started that phase in art this year at the 2 high schools, and we need to continue that. We're also going to be spending a lot of time, a lot of our funding on networking. So E-rate, a funding source that we receive federally, has changed the way that districts actually receive their funding. In the past, where we would have been receiving funding for, say, cell phones and getting certain reimbursements, that's starting to change. And because of that, what's happening is all the money that's being used ideally for cell phones and some other services are now being put all towards network infrastructure, which means that now with our free and reduced rate, it looks like this year this will be the first time ever that we can actually get some of our infrastructure, like switching, covered under a portion of E-rate. So we are going to be spending a bit of money this year out of our capital funds to try and upgrade the bandwidth that we have in our schools. So, and it's a needed refresh. So that's where you're going to see a lot of our capital funds going in this coming year. On the curriculum side, one of the things we're going to be spending a bit of time on is working on our teacher dashboard, which I know Dr. Rivera has talked about a lot through SchoolNet. We've been validating the data this year on the demographics, and we will continue to add in all of our assessment data throughout the year, start doing professional development the second half of the year with teachers so they become more familiar with the dashboard, and next year we'd like to have that implemented and start to use it. It is a multi-year process to really embed it into everything that we do, but the process has begun and we need to continue that. So for the most part, that's what we're going to be covering this next year.
Any questions?
Any questions?
Ms. Murray?
Yes, Ralph, could you just give just a brief outline of the security that we have on the equipment that we have in our schools? At least have just a little what we have in place for security. I mean, we're buying equipment, what do we have actually in place to safeguard?
So, and in regards to Chromebooks, they actually have, through our Meraki system, it's similar to like a LoJack. Basically, when if someone takes one of those Chromebooks out of this area, and even any of our iPads, they can be tracked on Google Maps so that we can see them. And it's a little app that actually installs into those, and that's provided through the Meraki wireless system that we put into place. Yeah, I mean, that's really the main, when we talk about security, that's probably the biggest piece, is making sure that we know where to go get that equipment. We really don't, for the most part, we don't have any theft. I mean, students are very, very responsible in general, and so teachers, with the tools that we have. I think they've actually appreciated having a lot more tools, and it's interesting to see the use of the Chromebooks, that students are using them on such a regular basis. They don't want to go without them. So they've actually, like I said, we've definitely seen the usage increase on a regular basis. We can see that in our bandwidth and what students, the students access. But we also don't see a lot of, once in a while, the thing that I'm probably more worried about than security is, replacements. And so we're making sure that we have a refresh rate in place because, screens will get damaged here and there and stuff through accidents. But otherwise, though, I think we're in actually pretty good shape for security. We know where the computers are going.
Well, we don't always borrow, it's not always the students, so, as far as any of the other equipment that we have, is there something in place for that, for security purposes,
You mean for any of the equipment?
that we have in our buildings?
So most of it is actually secured. Everything's asset tagged and ID'd, so that we do have an inventory of everything that we do have in the buildings. All of the purchasing goes through me. Most of the other equipment that we use besides laptops that are mobile, is pretty much fixed. So it's not something that, from a security standpoint, as long as they're tagged, they're staying in place.
And there's an inventory that we have?
Yes, there is.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Ralph, just one question that Ms. Mosby had raised about the whole status of televising and recording of our meetings. She's correctly pointed out we've had a bunch of glitches there, and we do want to have all of this stuff completely available to people of the public. Can you update us on what we're doing to make sure that our beautiful smiling faces are out there in public?
Sure. Yeah, so a lot of the equipment that we have right now, currently, if you don't know that, we do have everything once the meetings go on. It's recorded in this room, and we air them on YouTube, and they're archived on YouTube for you to be able to see within usually 48 to 72 hours that are up online. We are looking at a streaming service that will live stream these videos. We're hoping to have that in place within another, I'm realistically probably about another 3 months, so that then you'll be able to actually just go onto a site and watch a live feed of what's going on. We've also just purchased a new media server. The problem that we've had with Channel 78 is it's old equipment. The equipment that's in there has been there for many, many, many years, and they're older DVD players. What's happening is sometimes when meetings run long, the DVDs don't hold that much, so we have to buy dual-layer DVDs. They don't work well in the players, and it's hard to replace these players because technology has moved on. So what we're doing is moving that to more of a hard drive or a media server environment. So we've just purchased a media server. It's being built for us. We're mimicking this to be the same as what the city has. The city just got their media server for Channel 79, which is their public access channel, I believe. And we're going to be working together on making sure that we have the same system so we can also support each other in the future. So we have professional development that's offered between, when they bought theirs and we bought ours. We'll be actually going together to that professional development so we get more hours. So we are looking at backing each other up when we need to, because staffing is sometimes an issue as well, to make sure that we can get things up and available. But the media server, we've been told that it should arrive mid-January. It will take a little bit of time to get it into place, but like I said, we're moving forward. And right now, we're just going to kind of keep pushing along and making sure we get those DVDs still functioning and running on a regular basis. So.
Okay, thank you.
Saying we need to shorten our meeting.
Yes. Ms. Mosby.
But I just want to say thank you for the follow-up, and I didn't address it tonight because you gave me that lengthy email,
Yeah.
what was going on, so I want to thank you for that. And can you, in January, after mid-January, the second part of second January meeting, just come back to us and just give us a status as to where we are with the meeting, just in case something happens where it's not.
Definitely. What I'd like to do at one point or another, that we did, I think, around that same time frame, is just going to give you a technology update in general,
Yeah, that would be
as a
great.
report, and I can make sure that that's included in that.
Okay, that'll be good.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Ralph. Okay.
Another key area that we want to invest in is curriculum. K-5 writing, social studies, world languages. We have Dr. Maureen Ruby here to discuss the K-5 writing.
Hi, everyone.
How are you?
Hi.
I'm passing out a packet, it's information for you to take, we're not gonna go through it. But writing is pretty complicated, and I know that you're probably thinking, didn't we just adopt Journeys, which is a comprehensive literacy program? And yes, you did. And I think that you might have realized for yourselves last year that, the programs that you looked at all have pluses and minuses, and there is no perfect program. That's why we invest in teacher professional development, so that they can better use programs. But one of the weaknesses of all of the programs that are available right now that are considered to be comprehensive literacy programs, the weakness is in the area of written language. And if you take the time, I'm happy to meet with you at another time to go through any of the materials that I've passed out to you. But the Connecticut Core Standards for written language, K-5, are really comprehensive and very rigorous. And teachers are being expected to teach writing in ways that they've never, ever taught before. And it's really important that we get this right for students, because what happens in K-5 for writing is going to really set the path for what happens for these students in middle school and high school. And writing is critical. One of the areas of writing that we've never really addressed before is argument writing. And if you look at one of the documents that I gave you from the Common Core, it specifically discusses argument. And that has ripple effects through all of the content areas once the students get to middle school and high school. If you think for yourself about, I'm not here to talk about social studies, but social studies, argument is key. Understanding what the perspectives of different countries, of warring nations, of anything in social studies. Students have to be able to not only read and read critically, but then to write and respond, they need to be able to take a position. They need to be able to create an argument. These are skills that are going to transcend writing and go into their everyday activities in the workplace and as adults. So this is really critical that we get it right. Journeys is not going to do it. It's really not even saying that it's going to do it. They don't propose that they're going to meet all the standards in the way that they need to be met. And so what I have proposed is a K-5 writing program that is pretty much the one that is used by most districts who have tackled this problem. And last year, when I was in a different district, I had to research this and chose to use units of study writing, which is what we're proposing to use next year. It's been updated. There was a former program, and I've seen copies of it in the school district, so it was used in some schools before the non-Common Core aligned program. The data that's available from districts, New York City is using this program throughout all schools, districts in Connecticut are using it. The data is showing that students are making really amazing gains. One of the key things that you'll see in the packet is the assessment. We have been using a holistic scoring assessment that went with the CMT. It was a 6-point rubric. If you look through those rubrics that I've passed out to you at some point in time, they are extremely complex. And teachers are not going to be able to help students meet the standards with the 6-point rubric that we have been using, and that is in the Journeys program and the other commercial programs that are available. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about writing or about why I think we need to go with this program.
Okay. I'm going to ask you to curriculum committee meeting probably, I think January we've already tied up, but maybe in February,
Okay.
ask you to come in and give us a full presentation on this.
Yeah. If you have the time, I know everybody's busy, but I would invite you to look at, I handed you out a lot of 5th grade stuff because that's where we need to get these kindergartners by the end of 5th grade. And look at what they're expected to do in writing argument pieces, or it's called opinion in 5th grade. And I don't think there's anybody in the room that had to do that, even when they were in high school. And that's what is on the shoulders of these 10 and 11-year-olds. And the teachers have never taught like this before because we haven't been preparing teachers. So we need to have a program that's going to support the teachers to be able to support the students. And this is also the most efficient way to provide the professional development that we need to provide to the teachers. So I'll look for your invitation.
Okay.
Okay, thank
Good.
you.
Thank you.
Mike.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Ms. Mosby, question?
So, we can, after we review this, we can save all the questions and just bring it to the meeting instead of
Yeah.
going back to,
Yeah, I would say if you have questions, let's do it at the February meeting,
and we can,
and that'll be well before final budget adoption too.
right, okay.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
One of the areas that came up from our high schools was the need for bilingual receptionists. We've had a growing increase in our population of ELL students. Rather than just add a position or two positions, the superintendent really wanted to study the effective usefulness of our administrative and clerical support at our high schools and middle schools. The expectation is that we will likely need bilingual receptionists. But rather than going full out and supporting the bilingual receptionist, we want to really have a study done to see whether or not we need additional positions, whether or not the positions we have should be reconfigured, whether the needs of the high schools particularly have changed over the course of many years. So we are setting aside funding to potentially fund bilingual receptionists at each high school pending the completion of the study. Another area,
I'm sorry.
I think should.
Yes, go ahead,
Can I
Ms.
wait
Harris.
until he finishes?
No, if you got a question, I'd ask it as we go along.
What languages are we looking at when you mention bilingual?
It's primarily Hispanic, but it really will depend on the study and really the needs. So the idea is to have an organization come in, speak with the principal.
Fortunately, Ralph is here to the rescue.
That's why we did that technology investment.
Good thing we reviewed his, just renewed his contract.
Tom is
So
everything.
the idea is to have an organization come in, meet with the principals, the housemasters, the guidance counselors, really the staff within the school to kind of really feel out what the needs, the specific needs are, rather than just making a recommendation, having more information to kind of support that decision.
That makes sense, thank you.
One of the things that we also want to continue.
I'm sorry,
Oh,
another question, Ms. Murray?
Middle school, elementary school, why did we just zero in on the two high schools?
So the study will actually look at the middle schools as well, the high schools and the middle schools. We zeroed in on the high schools, both principals, Dr. Roberts and Suzanne Shorowitz, requested bilingual. They've actually seen a number of students at their schools and parents at their schools, and there's been language barriers. So the idea is to start with the high schools and the middle schools first, and then, depending on the outcome of the study, look at the elementary schools.
Mike?
Yes,
I
Mr.
might
Barbers?
just add, when, in the NFEP negotiations, when we signed the new contract with them this year, one of the things we agreed to look at was, I don't know, what was the term, Rich? The staffing and kind of administrative support at the high schools, because both schools are structured very differently. And what the kind of support staff do there is not the same in the schools.
Right.
And so I think in consultation with NFEP, we all agreed, it wasn't like it came from central office or from Manny Rivera specifically. It was kind of a joint decision that this needed to be looked at and we needed to figure out what would work best. And this was just part of that whole analysis that's being done, I guess, over the next 6 months or something?
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
good. Proceed.
Another area that we want to invest in is the continuation of new programs and initiatives, investing in NECA. So there's money put aside to invest in NECA. The IB program at Brian McMahon. Norwalk High has are looking to maybe make them a performing arts magnet. The Standards Initiative, maybe K-8 planning, Young Scholars, and the Norwalk International Academy that Helen talked about. We want to invest in our facilities. For a number of years, our facilities have been neglected. We are looking at, in our capital budget, a building management system. This would be designed to improve the heating mechanisms within the schools, and a district-wide BMS system. We also have the facility utilization study that we plan on bringing hopefully to the board either in January or February, and overall investments in our facilities. Our grants are aligned, and our foundation funding to early literacy, after-school and summer programs, parent engagement, Briggs High School, Common Core State Standards, and professional development. We also have a major component in this budget is special education. We have Kristen Fensor here, who's Director of Per Pupil Services. The part of this budget is a recommendation of the creation of an in-district special education program.
Good evening. So one of the things that we did as a group, the administrators, excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice a little bit this evening. The administrators in my department worked really hard at looking at what are we doing now currently and what are some things that we can do to enhance what we're providing students in Norwalk. So currently, we are contracting services of board-certified behavior analysts, which are specialists in the area of behavior and working with students with autism and other areas of difficulty in behavior. And we contract with about 4 or 5 different agencies at this time for those services. And as a group, we thought that having 3 of our own BCBAs within the district who would oversee then people who we call ABA specialists, and that stands for Applied Behavior Analysis, working with students one-on-one to teach really discrete skills to those students that those with the, or what the therapist would do, and the board-certified behavior analyst would oversee those programs, consult with teachers and teams, write behavior plans for students, and work on the social, emotional, behavioral needs of our most struggling students. And as I said, right now we're contracting those services out to different agencies. So we really are working to build consistency within our schools. That was kind of a key thing that we kept coming back to. So by having 3 full-time people in the district who can do that, we'd be getting the same message out and using the same system with all of our students. The second thing that we really thought was a need was establishing a program for, again, students with social, emotional, behavioral needs. Through our analysis of looking at all of our kids in the district, we spent a lot of time talking about, well, who are the kids who we're referring out to outside placements most often? And those students are those, again, with some social, emotional, behavioral needs. And typically that happens at the high school and middle school levels where we see students who are being referred. So when we looked at those kids, we thought, well, that didn't just happen. Those students had needs all along. We currently have 2 classes at Tracy Elementary that focus on those students with social, emotional, behavioral needs. And we wanted to enhance what those kids are getting by making it a little bit more therapeutic. And we thought adding a psychology position that could give them more time with someone who in the mental health field, a counseling professional. And we were looking at mirroring schools like High Road and CES, where we tend to send students to when we haven't been able to provide as much in the area of the therapeutic programming. So we want to enhance the elementary level and then create a program in one of the middle schools that also would have a very therapeutic situation for those kids, again, with a school psychologist spending much time in those rooms along with a special education teacher. The other thing that we talked about a lot as a group is that we really need to focus on professional development for our special ed teachers in the areas of reading and math, and what specialized instruction do we have and what do teachers need. And that goes back to Dr. Rivera's initial comments about building capacity within the district. So some of these things tie back to recommendations that have already been made before, so I'm sure that you're hearing some of the same things that have already been talked about. So we really want to look at a focus on getting our special ed teachers trained in real specialized reading and math programs, and that is throughout the district. And the final thing that we spent a lot of time talking about, and was in one of the former slides, is the idea of the Norwalk Early Childhood Center. So I just thought I'd give you an update on that. As of right now, where we stand, our hope is to have 6 classes that will be moving into that facility by the fall of the next school year. We have a committee, we're meeting regularly, myself, another special ed administrator, there's a parent representative, a teacher representative, and then we have members of the facilities, and Rich has been helping us, and then people from the city as well. So that is moving along. We're really excited about that. We've made some very good recommendations that I think will be wonderful for the students and the families that will be able to use that facility. In the second phase, we will hope to move 2 more classes over. Currently, we have 8 integrated preschool classrooms throughout 6 buildings in Norwalk. And by putting them all together, which again is a recommendation I know that you've heard before, we really are hoping to maintain consistency for those students. Again, consistency has really been a key factor in a lot of the work that we've done. We will be able to streamline services of our related service staff, such as our occupational therapists, physical therapists, and our speech pathologists. It will give the preschool teachers an opportunity to collaborate and work together on planning. We're really using the early learning standards by the state, so we've been doing a lot of professional development on that and focusing on using that in our instruction in the preschool. So this will really give them an opportunity to work together on a daily basis.
Okay, Heidi?
I want to thank you for all this. I think this is huge, having Norwalk Early Childhood Center, and I know it's been a long time coming, especially having typical and atypical children together. I think is important for social and emotional. I also think it's great that we have our ABA behaviorists, instead of outsourcing that, having that in-house with our OT and our PT, and our psychologists as well. And I know that you mentioned PD, how important that is, especially to get this off the ground and running.
Yeah.
I would also make a suggestion to have our assistants part of that, you know, our teaching assistants, our aides, our special ed
Yes.
aides that are really working one-on-one with
I
a lot of these
agree.
children.
And this year we did, on the election day, we offered a professional development to all the paraprofessionals in the district, and we focused on social, emotional, behavioral needs in the classroom, and it was wonderful. It was very well received by that group of people. We had approximately 100 paraprofessionals that came that day. It was really wonderful, so we want to keep moving forward with that. We've also been doing a lot of work with them as our administrative team, going into the schools and meeting with them and working with them within the schools. So we have a big focus on that as well. Thank you for mentioning that.
Mike?
One thing that has not been explained to us, but could you just explain with this new Allen Road Center, you said you're
I
gonna
hope I
have
can.
6 classes there initially?
Yes.
Where are they gonna be coming from? Where are those teachers
Okay, so
currently?
currently there are 2 integrated preschool classes at Marvin. There are 2 at Cranberry. There is 1 at Brookside, 1 at Kendall, 1 at Wolf Pit, and 1 at Fox Run. So that's 8. Did I get them
Kendall,
all?
the ones are Kendall, Wolf Pit, Fox Run, and Brookside.
And Brookside.
Yeah, and then 2 at Cranberry and 2 at Marvin. And has it been decided which ones are going, or is that not?
It has not officially been decided. There's been a lot of discussion about what would make the most sense, and I know there's some of the elementary schools that space is becoming an issue, so those are the discussions that we're having.
Okay, that's right. I'm glad you had that answer, because I've been
Yeah.
wondering for
Well,
a while.
I hope that I have that answer.
I will point out, by the way, that at the January meeting of the curriculum committee on the 13th, Ms. Fensler is going to be there, and the sole topic is special ed in particular. What are we doing in relation to the CREC reports that came in?
Yes.
Ms. Murray?
Yes. Is there additional information and details on the therapeutic classroom at the middle school level, process, referrals, how this actually will come together?
Yeah, we're still in the process of talking about that, and one of the things that actually Ms. Evan Levinson has been working really hard with us, Dr. Rivera was very helpful in letting us have an extra person to kind of lead that project to get this all planned out and then implemented. We're hoping to have the class designated for no more than 8 to 10 students. We really, again, looked at the classes at CES and High Road to get a model of what a therapeutic classroom might look like. All of those students who would be referred to that program would be done through PPT. It would all be individualized. But one of the things that we know needs to happen is that we really need to sit down and talk about a criteria for, what is the process and procedure to recommend that class. You wouldn't recommend that for just anyone, and there has to be a continuum of services for students as the law dictates to us. So we need to make sure we go through that continuum before we put a student in a more restrictive setting. But again, it would be a student who would need a real therapeutic setting with some sort of counseling on a regular basis.
Okay, the process, when do you think even a draft could be shared with the board?
We're actually starting that process. We have a draft started, so pretty quickly. Yeah,
Could you just share that,
absolutely.
Maybe we can talk about that at the meeting in
Absolutely,
January.
yeah. Yeah, I have a lot of things to share that, and I'm trying to highlight things here, but
Right,
there's
that'll be much more
so
in
much
depth.
more to talk about.
only because of the fact that we know sometimes we've had the therapeutic classroom, but it's in other areas. So that's why I just want to see if this is, what we've already experienced is something totally new to
Absolutely.
the district, or are we just calling it another name, because that's the type of thing, if we see it in
I
writing.
agree, and we spent a lot of time talking to the teachers and talking to the building administrators about what are we currently doing and what did they need more support in. And as I mentioned in the beginning, we do have a therapeutic classroom, so to speak, at Tracy Elementary. And we looked at that and said, this is, there's doing some really great things in there, but what more can we do to support them? So they had a lot of opportunity to give us feedback, and that was very helpful.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Budget reductions and reallocations. There were one-time expenses in the 14-15 budget, such as the facility utilization study that we were able to remove from our base budget. There's savings from contracted out custodial services. There's savings from the special education plan that Christy Fensor just discussed. The net savings for that program in year one is approximately $330,000. And then we also have operational efficiencies. We've been putting a lot more items out to bid in an effort to use the economies of scale of a large district like Norwalk to our advantage. This is the highlight of the chart of accounts for next year's budget. The recommendation is for $170.9 million, which represents a 2.74% increase. Salaries at 4.75% include a large number of new hires, such as the ABA therapists, the BCBAs, the NECA teachers. There are ELL teachers and ELL aides in there. We have actually a reduction in benefits. One of the best parts about the budget this year is because we've managed the insurance trust fund, we no longer have to have a margin on our operating budget. For a number of years, the insurance trust fund was in a deficit. We are actually in positive territory and have a surplus, so that margin can be held in the insurance trust fund. Additionally, through collective bargaining agreements, all employees are now on high deductible health plans, so that has resulted in a net savings to the district. The large reduction in professional and technical services relates to special education. The ABA therapists and the BCBAs that we contract out right now are held within a 300 series of object codes. So you'll see that large reduction there, which is also why you see a bump up in the salaries as the ABA therapists are there. We have equipment in there as well, which looks like a large increase, even though monetarily it's rather small. There are funds for both high school athletics to redo the weight rooms in there. It is a 2.74% increase, which is actually a lower increase than we've had in a number of recommended budgets. In the prior two budgets, we had recommendations of above 3%. Where the money goes. So that 2.74% increase represents about $4.5 million. $2.2 million goes to the NFT salary increases. About $1.6 million goes to other bargaining unit increases, whether that be NASA or NFEP or custodians or ESG or technicians. There's about $600,000 of an investment for ELL. There is a savings for special education. Strategic initiatives like Young Mentors or NECA or the IB program or the Norwalk Magnet Arts proposal. It's about $500,000. We're making an investment in class size of $300,000. Transportation of $600,000. In the operating budget for technology, we got $150,000. And miscellaneous increases of $200,000. And the reductions are largely related to one-time savings or in special education reductions, and also facility savings. In summary, the superintendent is recommending an operating increase of 2.74%. The budget builds on the foundation of the budgets in the past. It supports a strategic plan. It maintains strong support for literacy, Common Core, and other key initiatives like the IB program and NECA. It invests in curriculum and technology and facilities. It enhances special education services. It addresses the needs of our growing ELL population. It continues a commitment to professional development and standards, accountability, and recruitment, and it advances and designs development for new programs to move Norwalk Public Schools forward.
Now, Rich, before you go to the capital budget, as you know, we've started adopting, 3-year projected budgets, with one budget year being binding and then the other 2 estimates to give us the ability to do some longer-term planning. And in the original 3-year projection for this year, we had projected a 4.7% budget increase, and you and Dr. Rivera have actually brought in a 2.7%. Can you, again, I think some of this has been covered, but just to summarize, how did you manage to shave that down?
The 2 main areas where we've seen savings is the teacher contract. We had an NFT reopener, and that reopener kind of rearranged the salary lanes. It took out longevity. That saved approximately $1 million. As I mentioned earlier, now that we have a surplus in the insurance trust fund, we don't have to budget a margin in our insurance account in our local operating fund. We budget a margin typically because we're self-insured, so claims fluctuate. So the idea is if you have more of an unhealthy population and claims fluctuate above your budget, you have kind of that margin and that cushion to take care of that. We now actually have pretty significant surplus in the insurance trust fund, so now that margin sits in the insurance trust fund. So that was a savings of over $1 million. And additionally, being able to move all our bargaining units to the high deductible health plan has resulted in significant savings. The difference between an HSA plan and a PPO is pretty significant, so we're able to see savings there as well.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, Mike, did you have a?
Well, I would just ask on the insurance trust fund, if claims come in higher, you would draw down.
On the trust fund.
On the trust fund, would there be any reason, things would really have to go crazy for the margin to get jeopardized such that we'd have to budget?
It would be.
for next year?
So if claims were to spike significantly, the likelihood is that in 16-17, not next year, but the year after, we might have to build a margin into the operating budget in 16-17. If we have another good year of claims, then the margin essentially builds in the insurance trust fund. And through the first 4 months of the year, we're actually doing fairly well. We're actually doing better than we were this time last year.
Really?
And last year, we ended up having a sizable surplus against expected claims last year as well.
Okay, thanks.
Good, thank you.
Okay. For the capital budget, we are recommending a number of items. Phase 2 for the Norwalk Early Childhood Center that Chrissy actually spoke about. This is to create 2 additional classrooms in the current gym space in the Allen Road building. A district building management system. This would address a lot of the heating issues that we've had. We do not have a very well-functioning BMS system. We have an out-of-date BMS system. So the idea is to bring on board a new district-wide BMS system, investment in technology that Ralph spoke about. We are also recommending window replacements at West Rocks. A number of the windows, actually almost all of the windows, exterior windows at West Rocks, have issues. And it's not just a facilities issue, it's also a safety issue. And it also has an operating impact. Because the windows are faulty, we spend a lot more money on fuel to heat the building, and a lot more money on electricity. So having window replacement in West Rocks actually would have a dual impact on the budget. Paving, for a number of years we've requested paving money that has been stripped out of the budget. A lot of our parking lots and bus areas are in desperate need of paving, so we are requesting a little over $500,000 in paving. And then a district fire alarm replacement. Our current fire alarm systems, while they're up to code, are getting near their useful life. So the recommendation is for funds allocated in the capital budget to have a district-wide replacement of the fire alarm systems.
Ms. Keys?
Rich, did you ask your question in regards to the window replacements? Did you mention it was for all the windows in West Rock?
Exterior windows.
Exterior windows. And looking at year 2015, is it 15 and 16? Like,
15, 16.
Okay, when are we looking timeframe-wise to get that done?
Assuming that it makes it through all the committees and it's approved and we get the funding, we can then go out to bid starting in the summer of 15. And because it is obviously a large sum of money, we would have to go out to bid, we would have to review the bids. And then there is a process of going to land use and the Common Council for authorization. So the likelihood of starting would probably be in the fall.
Okay, which would be great before the really cold weather comes. And you're looking at an idea about 800,000
About 800,000.
approximate? Okay.
The expectation is that given the age of the windows, there is money put aside in case there maybe has to be an abatement, or there's PCP like there was an issue in row 8 when they did the constructions. So that is built into that budget as well.
And we'll get different costs, different
Correct.
companies, different, okay, thank you.
Mr. Kasimis?
Rich, how about the safety improvements?
Sure.
that,
We still have a little over $2 million in safety funds. That's in the existing capital budget. We have put out the RFP for window shades. The bids were actually due on Monday, and we received a number of bids. So now it's a process of forming a committee to review the bids and making a recommendation based on the bids and the reference checks. We are in the process of getting our PA system bid out as well, and we have also put out a Mylar film bid, which is essentially bullet-resistant film on windows.
we still have about 185,000 for the blinds?
Excuse me?
How much do we have for the blinds? Still about 185,000?
A little more than that.
A little more than that
Yeah.
now? Okay. And all the locks have been done, correct?
Phase 1 of the locks have been done, so we do have the locks that's going to kind of tweak locks here and there, but yes, it's largely.
Thanks.
Okay, good, thank you.
Just to go in a little bit of detail, the Norwalk Early Childhood Center, as I mentioned earlier, is for 2 additional classroom spaces, which would allow us to have all 8 sites in the one location. The district building management system is really a heating issue. We have a very outdated heating system. This would replace it and allow us to have a web-based direct digital control. As I mentioned earlier, it would also have a financial impact on utility costs. Having a district web-based EMS system would also allow us to control heat remotely and control electricity remotely, so that we can kind of have a uniform set temperature within our schools. Ralph talked about this earlier, but for technology, laptops, computer labs, Chromebooks, projectors, 3D printers, network switches, the window replacement at West Rocks, district paving, and the fire line.
All right. And is the, do we have the 3-year budget projection? Or
Yes,
is that in
it
the-
should be on your desk.
Is that, okay.
It
that's
should
in
say
the-
multi-year model.
Yeah, there it is. Multi-year model. Everybody should have that. That's the updated 3-year projection. Thank you. Any questions, comments from board members? Okay, excellent job as usual. It is such a pleasure to have yet another budget proposal where we're not going to have people marching on City Hall. We're just calmly funding a school system that's got a lot of improvements going on. Well done.
Very well done.
All right. And now it's time for the November 2014 financial monthly report. Dun, dun, dun.
Get back up here.
Back to you, Rich.
So we have closed out 5 months of our fiscal year. We have spent $51.8 million against an adjusted budget of $167.8. So we have spent just under 31%, which is well under a theoretical rate of 41.67%. Even factoring in one-time payments that happen towards the end of the year, whether there be severance payments that happen in January or the teacher accrual that happens towards the end of the year, we are still well within the budget.
Excellent. Any questions? Okay, thanks, Rich. All right, we'll next move on to committee and representative reports. We'll start with finance. Ms. Murray. This committee report.
You just heard our committee report.
That's true. That was a pretty detailed committee report.
That's correct, that's right.
So I guess so just timing on the budget, the budget will be on the agenda for the January 6, 2015 meeting for approval. So any board members, we've got 3 weeks to look over the details. I mean, I think the budget's pretty well explained there. But obviously, feel free to call Mr. Rudel or Dr. Rivera at any time if you need more detail, and then we'd expect to vote on it on January 6th.
Right, we had our meeting for December, so we're all set for the holidays.
Excellent. All right, Mr. Kasimis, any reports?
Sure, 2 things in athletics. I heard today that Doug Marquetti, the athletic director over at Norwalk High, his mom passed away. So sad news, and our condolences to him and his family. Also, we had a Norwalk Facilities Commission meeting, and it was about the Norwalk Early Childhood Center, and they just gave the whole presentation. But I do want to add that there's 3 stages to the school, to expanding the school. Number 1, as they said, the 6 classrooms at $1.3 million, and then the gym renovation, and eventually, if they need to, they can put an addition on the building at the end of all that. Also, there's a potential $500K reimbursement from the state, that's right, and also potential for the pre-K grant of $300K as well. And they also come up with the official name is Norwalk Early Childhood Center, and there's going to be a banner with a bunch of kids running around on it, correct? So the architectural firm came and showed us everything, and the mayor was there as well. So everything's moving as planned.
Excellent. All right, as I mentioned, January curriculum meeting will be devoted exclusively to special education, particularly looking at the recommended improvements in the 2 CREC reports, the Capital Region Educational Council reports, and Ms. Fensor is going to update us about how we're doing against the recommendations in those reports in terms of many of the things we've talked about today, but also others. Ms. Mosby.
When we just had, can't think of her name right now, she was up here talking about the curriculum, and since.
Ms. Fensor. Oh, I'm sorry. Maureen. She's going to come to the February meeting.
Okay, she's coming in February, not
Correct.
January, okay.
January is SPED, special ed, and February is actually going to be the writing report from her, and I think also Mr. Dodona wanted NEASC updates, I think, okay, which is the certifications for the high schools. So those 2 will be on the February agenda. Okay? Mr. Barbas, negotiations just about done.
Negotiations is just about done. We still have, I don't know where food service, we still haven't completely finished that, but, and there's been some comment, just so people know, for the record, there are not regular committee meetings for the Negotiations and Personnel Committee. We meet with our union partners for negotiations. That's when we have meetings, and those meetings are typically, they are confidential under FOIA, and they are not public meetings, so there are not minutes or agendas. So I just wanted to set the record straight for anyone who thought that somehow some funny business was taking place. But now as you heard Rich go through, we've pretty much, this year was a big year for negotiations, and 95% of it's behind us.
Excellent.
Haven't met with Nanny.
Okay. All right.
He's been preoccupied.
All right. Next is board member announcements. Any announcements? Ms. Keys.
Can't like tomorrow.
Did you want to go?
I said can't like tomorrow, that's all.
Oh, I was just going to mention that.
Okay.
We're thinking the same thing.
All right.
Yeah, candlelight was last night, tonight, and tomorrow night. Couldn't go tonight, obviously. Did go last night, and it was just amazing, which it is every single year. So it's just a great Norwalk tradition that we have that every year. I think it's been going on since 1930-something. It's been going on for quite some time. Also wanted to mention several of us here from the board went to the launch of the Silvermine Media Center, which we're really trying to do is one of Dr. Rivera's visions for many of our schools to have media centers in our libraries. So not just a library to go to, which is fabulous in itself, but also to really make it into a user-friendly media center. And I have to say Silvermine has really stepped it up, and it looks absolutely breathtaking. I know the mayor was there as well. And it's just a real user-friendly way for our children to do work. We can have teachers collaborate together. They can have meetings. Children can go there and work on laptops, work on the computer, also do reading, but it just is a much more friendlier atmosphere for our children, and it's really up and coming for many districts in the area, and I'm glad that Norwalk our first school is really Silvermine, but they're really working on it, improving it, and it's really a pilot for all of our schools, Silvermine, so we're hoping all of our other elementary schools will come by. I spoke to the PTO president about it when I went, to really look at what Silvermine has done, and then these other schools can, Silvermine can be the model school for all of our other elementary schools to really make it into media centers, which really was very, very impressive.
Funding? funding?
They raised $60,000.
All on their own.
On their own, private contributions. They did,
Wasn't here.
they did
Yeah.
walks. I was up there in the summer.
Yeah.
The mayor and I were there for the summer when they
Right.
did
Yeah.
their walk, around the grounds. They
fundraiser.
raised the funds over 2 successive years. And I agree, they really did a nice job. It's the technology is good, but just the whole atmosphere. I mean, even the coloring of the carpeting made you sort of feel good, maybe being in the room. They just did a beautiful job.
Also
That
parent-
could be a real good model for the other elementary schools to emulate.
It's also parent volunteers. There was one parent that was an architect that came in, and another one that was a painter that painted. So like I could said, from the ceiling to the floor was
It's
just.
a real community project.
Absolutely, you have that feel.
Even the comments from the children about what they felt about being in there, how comfortable. I think one young person said, "I could sleep here," or something. Not meaning he would sleep while he's studying, but it was comfortable.
That's right.
Absolutely.
It's important, I like that community piece.
Yep.
Any other announcements? No? Artie?
As you know, last June, 4 of the board members had kids that were graduating from Norwalk High School. It was a special day for us. Well, today, my daughter texted me, and she says, she also graduated in June. She says, Dad, I'm officially done with my first semester of college. Yay. I'm sure it's for all of us. Yeah, all of us. So, that means you're coming home.
That's right.
That's the real thing.
Mine is her last, my daughter's going to Berkeley College of Music, so for their exams, they sing and do stuff like this. So she has a performance Wednesday night in Boston. I'm gonna pick her up and then bring her back, and she'll be here for a month.
I think we're all proud. My son is in UConn and got straight A's. He'll probably get very angry that I said this. He probably will get quite angry, but it's just great that our
Something to be
kids
proud
have
of.
all gone through
Yeah.
Norwalk schools and are all of our kids are doing fantastic. So it shows that we've got great schools here.
Yes, we do.
Mayors.
Mr. Mayor?
I agree with this great school comment, by the way. And just 2 things. One, Mr. Lyons had sent me a video of the type of plane that his son flies down in Maryland or Virginia.
For the Navy. Well,
For
he's
the Navy.
out in San Diego now.
Yeah, San Diego, and it was just absolutely amazing. So I know how proud he is of his Norwalk High School
The
graduate.
Norwalk High School graduate.
Oh, yeah. And, but the other thing is, and I believe almost all of them are Norwalk students. And we've talked about this over the past couple of days. And I went to bid them farewell when they left for Florida. And I went the other night, last night, when they came back. The Packers cheerleading group, the under 13 and the under 10, for 2 years in a row. They competed and they won the state championship. They competed in New Hampshire and won the regional championships. And then they went to Florida, and both teams won first place in the national championship. And it's just hard work, dedication, and again, it didn't cost anything from the city of Norwalk. Unfortunately, we'd like to help fund them, I guess, if we could. But they went down pretty much on their own dollar, and their parents paid the way for them to go to make up the difference between the fundraising effort and how much the trip actually cost. But we're going to be recognizing them at our first meeting in January of the Common Council. Next Tuesday night's Common Council meeting is canceled for obvious reasons. But I just wanted to mention that because we're so proud of them. And I have a little bit of ownership there. My granddaughter's on the other under 10. I never thought I'd hear myself. I never thought I'd hear myself say that. But, so anyway.
Rosa?
Brian McMahon, did they have their concert tonight?
Yeah, Poinsettia concert was tonight.
Right.
Of course, as I'm the only
That's
Brian
right.
McMahon, there's, are you on it?
Yes, my daughter
We're
told me,
here.
she said this meeting should have been canceled. Because she was in,
I'd like to finish
McMahon's
up.
got to start doing it for 3 days like Noah.
That's right. And then you're able to go, right?
Let the public comments from this board member, just, for parents who have kids that are seniors, this is right the period for people who have applied early decision.
Right.
And I'm happy to report that an applicant from Brian McMahon got into Harvard University early decision.
Wow.
Excellent.
Fantastic. Very nice.
Excellent.
He's a friend of a friend, but so I knew his first name, but I don't know his last name exactly.
That's great.
All right, anything else? Okay. We'll move on now to approval of minutes. These are in the packet. Mr. Kasimis moves to approve the minutes. Any second? Ms. Keys? Any changes, corrections, additions? Ms. Mosby?
On page 1111, at the bottom, where it says, Ms. Mosby asked a few comments she made about how students for bricks could be moved to a building that currently is not part of the transportation program. I never said that that wasn't part of it. Then that part, it says she's noted that there needs to be a transition plan that complies with school standards and the building use designations. I didn't say that either. What I actually said was, I asked about the children being removed from bricks temporary, and that would it would it be hard to bring the children back if we don't leave them, and if we don't leave any child in the school due to code violations? And Dr. Vera agreed, and I believe on the last meeting, we said that we remember that as well. So we just have to just get that,
Yes, that's correct. My recollection
Yeah.
is that that's what you said. Your concern was if you move everybody out of the building,
we can't.
you lose your
that.
grandfathered status.
Yes,
And now you gotta bring the whole building back up to code before you can move back in.
exactly.
Okay? Is that clear, Secretary? Good.
Thank you.
Any other corrections? Mr. Kasimis?
Same page, page 11, it says Ms. Kasimis noted that he attended the young lieutenants. It's actually the young astronauts.
All right. Anything else? Okay, with those corrections, all in favor of approving the minutes, please indicate. And that is unanimous. Okay. All right, Chair would entertain a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of discussion of documents related to collective bargaining agreements. Mr. Kasimis moves, Mr. Chairman seconds. All in favor? Those of us who are still awake, all in favor? Unanimous. We'll take our traditional 5-minute recess.
No? What is it?
Okay, Chair would entertain a motion to add an item to the agenda, which is to consider the Norwalk Board of Education District Retirement Incentive Program. Is there such a motion? Mr. Kasimis moves. Is there a second? Mr. Barbas seconds. All in favor of adding this item to the agenda, please indicate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is that unanimous? Okay. And that's, how many of us are here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7?
7.
Am I counting right? Yes, okay, so 7, because I got to send this for the minutes. 7 here. Okay, Chair would entertain a motion to approve the Norwalk Board of Education District Retirement Incentive Program with one change, meaning that the period of time by which certified administrators must submit an election to participate will be extended to January 30, 2015, with the document changed as appropriate to reflect that. Okay, is there such a motion? Ms. Harris moves, Mr. Kasimis seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to a vote. All in favor of approving the program as amended, please indicate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Rosa, you voting on this one?
I'm sorry, yes.
There we go. Okay.
Rosa falls asleep.
Reading.
Unanimous. Chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Rosa was tweeting.
I was
Kasimis
reading.
moves to adjourn. Is there a second?
Be very clear.
There are seconds. All in favor? Meeting adjourned. Soul
Clear,
America.
Clear. He's taping that. Be very clear.
Okay.
Hey, guys, before you
That
leave.
from the record.
We have a policy.
Strike that from
Hey,
the
Yeah, thank you.
by the way, is anybody here a notary public?
Sorry.